The fact that Kate Middleton made the effort to attend church, knowing she would be photographed, was a clear signal that she was well enough to travel to Scotland. In the quiet rolling hills of Scotland, the tiny, crafty kirk stands as a symbol of peace and tradition for the royal family. It was here, in the shadow of Balmoral Castle, that Kate made her unexpected return. The date was August 25, 2024, and while the world had closely watched her every step with concern since her cancer diagnosis in March, no one quite anticipated what would unfold on this serene Sunday morning. The congregation gathered early, some locals and others royal watchers who had journeyed from afar, hoping to catch a glimpse of the princess. Her public appearances had been few and far between since her diagnosis. Wimbledon in July, a heartfelt video message during the Olympics, and now a quiet church service in the Scottish countryside. Many were unsure what to expect. Would she appear frail? Would this be another brief, polite appearance, or something more? As Kate arrived, accompanied by King Charles, the murmurs of the crowd quieted. She was elegant and composed, but there was something different about her. She looked stronger than many had expected, though the weight of the past few months was still visible in her eyes. This wasn't just another royal duty for her. This moment meant something. The church filled with soft echoes of hymns as the service began, and the air was thick with reverence as the congregation settled into their pews. A wave of emotion filled the room, as if everyone there was holding their breath, waiting for something profound to happen. Then, just as the service was drawing to a close, Kate did something no one expected. She stood and walked to the front, her every step deliberate. There was a collective pause as she turned to face the crowd. What happened next sent chills through everyone present. She began to speak, her voice calm but carrying a strength that could be felt in every corner of the church. I want to thank you all for your prayers, your kindness. Your faith in me has given me more strength than I can ever express. The room fell into a hush, and her words, simple yet filled with raw emotion, resonated deeply. The emotion in the room was palpable, and the princess's presence seemed to hold everyone in a powerful collective moment of silence. In that silence, the real weight of Kate Middleton's journey began to settle in. As she stood before the congregation, the air inside the kirk shifted. It wasn't just the unexpected nature of her address, but the weight of her words that began to resonate deeply with everyone in the room. For months, the public had only caught glimpses of the princess fighting through her illness with grace. But now, in this small church nestled in the Scottish countryside, they were witnessing something profoundly personal. Her voice, though soft at first, echoed through the stone walls with a clarity that caught everyone off guard. I've spent much of this year reflecting, she began, her eyes scanning the room, filled with both familiar faces and strangers. On life, on family, on faith. It's been a time of struggle, but also a time of immense gratitude. The stillness in the room was almost eerie. You could hear a pin drop as she spoke. Her words were slow and deliberate. There was no need for grandeur here. This was a moment of raw honesty. She continued, the love and support I've received from all of you, from my family, from complete strangers, has given me a strength I never knew I had, and for that, I'm forever grateful. But it wasn't just the words themselves that moved the congregation. It was the vulnerability behind them. Her cancer diagnosis had been a shock to the nation, and for months, people had speculated about her health and her future. Yet here, in this moment, she was laying it all bare, sharing her journey not as a princess, but as a human being who had faced her darkest hours. Then, in a voice just above a whisper, she said something that sent chills through the room. I've learned that faith is not found in our strongest moments, but in the ones where we feel weakest. And in those moments, we must hold on to hope, because that is what will carry us through. Her words hung in the air, leaving the congregation visibly moved. Some had tears in their eyes, others sat in stunned silence, but one thing was clear. This was no ordinary royal appearance. This was a deeply personal moment, shared with those lucky enough to witness it. The moment Kate Middleton shared with those lucky enough to be present was profound. Just as she was about to step back, she added, "It's moments like these that remind me of the power of hope and faith. Thank you for helping me find it." And with that, she returned to her seat, leaving the congregation in awe of what they had just witnessed. A sense of quiet all lingered in the air as the congregation remained seated, still processing the powerful moment. It wasn't simply the words she had spoken, but the vulnerability behind them, the raw emotion that had swept through the room. Just when it seemed like the service had reached its emotional peak, something unexpected happened, something that would leave everyone talking long after they left the kirk. A brief pause occurred as the minister prepared to close the service. The usual formality of the occasion seemed almost irrelevant now after Kate's stirring address. But then, a single voice broke the silence. A soft, almost tentative humming began from the back of the church, carrying the tune of an old hymn, one that many in the room had grown up hearing. It was a hymn of hope, of strength in times of adversity. Slowly, others joined in, their voices blending into a hauntingly beautiful chorus. As the hymn grew louder, it felt as if the very walls of the church were resonating with the collective emotion of the people inside. The harmony was both soothing and overwhelming, and for a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Tears welled up in the eyes of many, while others held their loved ones a little tighter. It wasn't planned, but it felt so natural, almost as if this spontaneous act of unity was exactly what was meant to happen. Kate, visibly moved by the moment, bowed her head, her hands clasped in front of her as she walked back to her seat. Her eyes met King Charles's, who was seated next to her, and the two exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. No words were needed. Both of them were battling their own health challenges, with Charles quietly facing his own struggle with cancer. It was a private burden they carried together, yet here, surrounded by faith and hope, they shared a silent understanding. As Kate sat down, Charles gently reached for her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. The power of the song seemed to sweep over both of them, just as it did for everyone else in the room. For months, the quiet strength of the royal family had been on display, but in this moment, their shared burden and the healing power of faith felt more tangible than ever. The public had watched Kate and Charles face deeply personal battles, but here, they weren't just royal figures. They were two people finding strength in faith, just like everyone around them. The hymn continued for what felt like an eternity, yet no one wanted it to end. The atmosphere was thick with emotion, the kind that reaches deep into your soul. It was a shared experience, one that would be spoken about in hushed tones for years to come. It was more than just a church service. It was a moment that transcended tradition and royalty, bringing everyone in the room closer in a way that words couldn't fully capture. As the last notes of the hymn faded into silence, no one moved right away. There was a sense that something profound had just occurred, something they would carry with them long after they walked out of the church's doors. Kate and Charles, too, seemed changed by the experience, their gazes soft but resolute as they stood to leave. What happened next was still unknown, but one thing was certain. This moment would stay with everyone who witnessed it, a moment that truly gave them chills. As the service came to an end, the atmosphere in the kirk was still charged with the raw emotion of what had just taken place. People rose from their seats slowly, as though unsure if they were ready to break the spell that Kate Middleton's words and the spontaneous hymn had cast over them. But for those closest to the royal family, this day was about more than the service itself. It was about the strength Kate and King Charles had shown in their darkest moments. As they made their way out of the church, all eyes were on Kate and Charles. The two walked side by side, their connection now more visible than ever. It wasn't just a show of royal unity. It was something far more personal. Both had been through battles that tested their resilience. Kate and Charles paused for a moment on the steps of the church, exchanging a few quiet words that only the two of them could hear. There was a deep understanding between them, a shared experience that went beyond titles and public appearances. As they stood there, something remarkable happened. A young girl, no older than 8, approached the royals. She held a small bouquet of flowers in her hands, trembling slightly as she stepped forward. Kate smiled warmly, her expression filled with kindness and recognition. Kate warmly knelt down, taking the flowers from the young girl. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice full of gratitude. The girl, her eyes wide with awe, stammered, "You're so brave, Your Highness." For a moment, Kate looked taken aback by the words, but then she smiled again, this time with quiet determination. "You're brave too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The girl beamed, and with that simple exchange, it became clear that Kate's strength wasn't just about her personal battle. It was about how she inspired others to find their own courage. As the car carrying Kate Middleton and King Charles pulled away from Selkirk, the weight of what had just transpired inside those ancient stone walls settled in. For the royal family, public appearances had always been part of their duty, but this moment was different. It felt deeply personal, almost too intimate to share with the world. Yet here they were, two figures bound by both blood and circumstance, standing at the crossroads of their private battles and public roles. For Kate, the road ahead was filled with uncertainty. While her doctors had assured her that she was making good progress after her cancer diagnosis, the emotional toll was undeniable. Each appearance felt like a test of her strength, not just physically but mentally as well. Yet today, standing alongside Charles in the face of their shared struggles, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. There was no hiding the battle scars, but there was also no hiding the resilience that had grown within her. King Charles, too, had felt the weight of the crown heavier than ever in recent months. While his illness remained largely behind the scenes, those close to him saw the toll it was taking. Even so, his sense of duty remained unwavering. He had been raised for this role, trained for decades to lead the country, but nothing could have prepared him for the battles that had come with age, both within himself and watching the next generation, like Kate, face their own struggles. As the car wound its way through the quiet roads of Balmoral, the silence between Kate and Charles wasn't uncomfortable. It was a silence filled with understanding, a moment of reprieve from the demands of their titles. Charles turned to Kate, his face softened by the late afternoon light. "You did well today," he said, his voice low but filled with genuine pride. Kate smiled, but there was a heaviness behind her eyes. "Thank you," she replied softly, glancing out the window at the rolling hills. It felt like more than just a service. It was, Charles said, his gaze following hers. "These moments matter more than people realize. It's where we find our strength." They both knew that this wouldn't be their last public test. The challenges ahead, both personal and royal, would demand more of them than ever before. News of Kate Middleton's emotional return to Selkirk spread quickly. Within hours, images of her address to the congregation, standing beside King Charles, were circulating through every corner of the media. But it wasn't the images alone that captured the public's attention. It was the raw emotion behind them. For so long, the royals had been seen as symbols of strength, grace, and tradition. But today they had shown something far more powerful, their humanity. Across the country and even around the world, people were moved by Kate's vulnerability. Social media was flooded with reactions, many praising her courage and openness in speaking about her journey with cancer. Others were struck by the quiet, supportive presence of King Charles, knowing that he too was facing his own private battle with the disease. Together, their appearance wasn't just a royal engagement. It was a reminder that no one is immune to hardship, no matter their status. "Seeing Kate today gave me chills," one Twitter user wrote. "She's been through so much, but she's still standing, still showing up for others." It's a reminder that even in our weakest moments, we can find strength. Another post read, "The royal family has always seemed untouchable, but today they felt like one of us." Kate's words about faith and hope were exactly what the world needed to hear right now. It wasn't just words of praise that poured in. There were also countless stories from those who had faced similar battles, inspired by Kate's bravery. People shared their own experiences of fighting illness, of finding hope in the darkest times, and of the unspoken strength that comes from simply not giving up. For many, seeing Kate and Charles standing together as they faced their own personal challenges resonated deeply with the public. It wasn't just about royal duty. It was about survival, resilience, and the quiet determination to move forward. In the days that followed, the media continued to dissect every moment of the church service, from Kate's heartfelt address to the spontaneous hymn that left the congregation in awe. Yet, no headline could truly capture the profound impact the event had on those who witnessed it. For Kate and Charles, it marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where their personal battles would intertwine with their public roles more than ever before. For the public, their vulnerability only deepened the connection to the royal family. reminding everyone that, at the end of the day, we are all human. What are your thoughts about this extraordinary event? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to our channel for more.